Hey everyone, so we're here with Mayor Paul Brodeur. Thanks for joining us here from the comfort of
Glad to do it. Appreciate the opportunity. And is it your birthday?
a couple days ago.
I missed. Sorry about that. Well, happy belated birthday.
I appreciate it very much. Thanks.
Of course.
First off, just how are you doing? I know it's taking a toll on everyone in different ways. How are you feeling?
I tell you what, I'm doing great. People have been terrific. The amount that people want to help, I see it every minute of every day. And I'm not a big polls person, but I don't know if you saw, there was a Globe poll yesterday.
I did, yeah.
Statewide piece that talked about how, everyone's holding together. Everyone is really being, solid around the message and figuring it out. And it's such a big thing, and it's such a big change. It's important to give folks a little bit of bandwidth to recognize that you can't just adjust to this overnight. And people got to be cool, and they are being cool so far. How's your family doing?
We're hanging in there.
Good.
We got a soon-to-be 1-year-old on Tuesday, so
I know that. Don't forget the dog.
The dog's doing okay. She's doing a little stir crazy, but we're doing all right. Appreciate you asking. You haven't been shy about advocating for social distancing. You've been on Facebook and on videos and kind of advocating for that.
Sure.
Talk about how you're seeing that happen in Melrose. Are you kind of pleased with what you're seeing? I know you said the other day you had to break up kind of a soccer game or something, but how are you seeing that take a shape around Melrose?
I tell you what, it's going well. And to the, to your point about, breaking people up, I've done that maybe, half a dozen times. Most recently, I was driving by the skate park, saw maybe 5 or 6 people there, adults, a couple of maybe teenagers. Door was open. I pulled over, and I wasn't dressed like the mayor, right? I was just some schmo with a sweatshirt on and jeans. And
I feel like you're talking.
So I just pulled over, jumped out, and said, "Hey guys, I need your help. Like, you got to get out of here. The skate park's closed. I know it stinks." It's posted on the gate, and the guy, the leader, I guess, very cool about it, said, "Oh, geez, didn't even realize the door was already open," and off they went. It was kind of 2 groups. They both vacated. No hassles, no back talk. They got it. They were very respectful. So I'm not sure that's appropriate in every case, but I've been pretty comfortable doing that, and have been delighted with the results. I mean, we're seeing it less and less and less, to be sure. So the message is getting out there.
Great. I noticed a ton of. I was talking to Health Director Ruth Clay, who's been tremendous through this whole thing, and I asked her. I said, obviously the businesses need people right now more than ever. They need for people to take advantage of curbside pickup, of takeout, of delivery. The flip side of that is obviously a very real issue that we're at right now. I see. I know you've had some curbside pickups or takeout. I think I've seen on Facebook. How's the balancing act there? Because Ruth Clay had said, we encourage people to still partake in that as long as they're socially responsible and social distancing. Can you talk about that balance that people are trying to find right now?
Again, it's tough, and I couldn't be more excited the way folks are responding, recognize that need, help when they can, and sometimes really just helping in simple ways, not waiting for someone to build a big effort or anything like that. But it is tricky, and I think it took a little while for folks to figure it out. But a lot of the places you go to, like where I was at Wooden Fire, they were asking people essentially not to wait inside. I don't really want to leave anyone out. Bohemian, they have spaces lined up on the curb so you can do business. You don't have to go inside at all. The big places, the Shaw's and CVS, Whole Foods, they have lines marked where you should line up in terms of checkout and that kind of stuff. And again, it's hard for people to get used to that, but folks have been terrific. I want to give a little bit of a special shout out to Lisa Lord, the high school teacher, who is in overdrive all the time, and she's taking care of family, she's taking care of her kids, meaning her students. I know she thinks of them as her kids, and has also taken the time to build this community united effort, which is quite simply making sure that folks have an outlet to thank folks that are really at the front lines of this thing. As simple as sending a note, essentially. The interesting thing about it is, so, we chatted about it a little bit, thought police, fire, and DPW, and Hallmark Health, or I shouldn't say Melrose Wakefield Healthcare in the hospital. That was kind of the jumping off point, and everything is kind of a work in progress now. As you might imagine, as that initial announcement went out, people were pointing out other folks that, you kind of think of everyone, but you don't. If you are working at Shaw's, right, probably for not such a terrific wage, and you're serving those folks, you deserve a thank you too. The folks at CVS that are still getting you your prescription, and the list goes on and on. So I want folks to understand, when you see something like that, my apologies for the bird in the background. When you hear something like that, it's certainly no one has been left out intentionally, and folks are very welcome to adding people to that list, and in whatever way you think can be helpful. We certainly want to hear about that and pass it along.
I've been covering you from the beginning of your campaign, and you were running on transparency, communication, and a number of other things. But I know that was a tentpole of what you're running on.
Sure.
And it's taken shape since, I think, the day you came in. I know you've been on you're on social media. You're responding to people. I see you now with the daily video updates. Talk about kind of how you're kind of weaving in that communication, that transparency that you were pushing now when it's most important.
So it's tricky, right? We would have liked to take probably a more deliberate approach, and that's okay. So it's grown, obviously, because we didn't start with video updates or anything like that. But what we started thinking about is, how do we touch every population, every group that we need to touch, and make sure that they're getting the message for two reasons. Because it's important to have the latest information, but it's also impossible to understand what bogus information might be out there. So that's what we've tried to expand to, the Everbridge calls and kind of the normal social media channels, but also the newspaper. A little bit trickier because the cycle doesn't fit too well for a crisis like this. And really just kind of try to reach everyone where they live. We are still focused on where are those pockets where people might not be getting the message for whatever reason, isolation, language barrier, whatever the case may be. And we will shortly be launching a part of the Melrose Helps effort is a volunteer kind of phone banking campaign, to use a campaign analogy, to reach out initially to our senior population, and then to others that we think might not be getting the message, and just checking in. How are you doing? What do you think you need? Is there anything you're concerned about that we might not have been thinking about? And doing our best to respond. I think people might be a little bit frustrated because it's been a little bit slow going, but there's a couple of reasons for that. You can't simply use a voter list because that doesn't capture everyone we need to reach. And if you are, say, you're on a green card, you don't speak English as your first language, you might not have a computer, you don't get some of the normal updates, we still want to find a way to reach those people. So we've been building a database to do that. And we're going to rest assured, it's always a work in progress, but we're going to be out there sooner than you think, making sure we're touching those folks.
Great. I know some of the surrounding communities, and I'm certainly not comparing Melrose to any other
it's okay.
surrounding city, but some of them have dozens of reported cases of COVID-19. Melrose, fortunately, as of last update, had, I believe, 4. I know that
I think it's the last one. But...
Up to 8. Thank you. I know you and Ruth Clay have been very clear that, as has everyone, that this number will probably go up. Is the city going to continue to be updating people on the number of cases? And is that, I'm not familiar with Department of Public Health regulations, and I know that there are privacy laws. I mean, is this something that the city is going to continue to try to do?
So we're trying to, that's a good way to say it. We're trying to stay consistent with the Department of Public Health, with no longer publicly reporting cases on a city and city, town by town basis. We have not yet had a conversation with them about why, to see, if there is a bigger public health concern that would have us lean against the transparency. Then we will certainly listen to that. It's a fairly recent change, because I do think there folks do take some comfort in knowing as much as possible what's going on. Obviously, we're not going to share names, addresses, or anything like that. But I do want folks to understand this does not in any way change the city's approach, or any cities and towns' approach to public health in terms of delivering services or doing the contact tracing. We still get that information, and that does mean that we do the social contact tracing. That is really one of the arrows in the quiver, if you will, to limit the spread.
Sure. You have a unique perspective on the relationship between federal government, state government, local government, obviously our former state representative. A couple questions I just want to ask on that front. I know Kate Liber-Garabedian was recently sworn in, former Melrose City Councilor, took your job at the State House.
Now I can tell her the truth about the job, now that she's got it.
Well, she's learning on the fly, but how important is it to, at a time like this, how important is it to have a voice, particularly like Kate's, at the State House for Melrose, when, as I said, when the relationship between those levels of government is so kind of up in the air right now with everything that's going on from the national level down?
Critically important. And I will tell you, she has jumped right in from even before she was technically sworn in. She was doing the job before that, from a practical point of view. Same thing, Senator Lewis has been front and center offering his advice, his insight on some of the stuff the state's doing. I've had the opportunity to have some input, because of some of the connections from my past life, to be sure. And I would say both Congresswoman Clark and Senators Warren and Markey have really drilled down to the local level. And the communication has been terrific. The customer service has been terrific. And it's super important to know what's going on at the state and federal level, because it obviously impacts what we do, how we can help, who might need priority help that isn't yet part of the stimulus package or some of the unemployment moves that the state has taken. And that's, to have all that integrated is really important to making our best decisions on the local level about, if they're unemployment versus underemployment, two different things. And they're building some supports in for folks that might not be unemployed, but have still seen huge income losses. That also helps us to make sure that folks that might have that kind of distress will connect in the right place. And that means kind of all of us being coordinated, all of us speaking with one voice. And even amongst the mayors and town administrators, that's been a big deal. Everyone trying to, from a policy perspective, be as consistent as possible, just so people aren't needlessly moving around. If they think they can get a bite to eat in Somerville, they leave here, they're moving around. So the coordination among the mayors has been outstanding as well.
I certainly won't put you on the spot with any national opining here, but
I got some thoughts, but I think the best of everyone.
You're filling the job perfectly. So they say all politics is local, still. And there's a Washington Post story yesterday that said, I don't know if you had seen it, but state leaders had said that Massachusetts was receiving only 17% of materials that they had requested, medical supplies they had requested. Other states were getting more. Again, not asking for your opinion on the national stage right now, but it impacts Melrose. I mean, those materials will go to Melrose Wakefield. They'll be serving Melrose residents one way or another eventually. has Melrose had any problem getting anything so far, or has the hospital, to your knowledge, had any problem getting anything? And can you just talk about that dynamic real quick?
So I guess so. What we are doing for city resources is on a day-by-day basis, tracking inventory and requests, because it is a delicate balance. We want to have as much as we possibly can, but there is a balance that we don't necessarily want to be taking away from the hospital right in our backyard and is on the front lines as much as some of our city employees are, our police and fire and DPW. The governor has been very good about keeping us in the loop and certainly making the case at the national level that look, we need our share, and it is not. I think some of the stress is it appears that it's almost competitive, the states versus the federal government, and that's obviously no good. One thing we need to do is, I'm not saying we can never have disputes about what's going on, and I think like some of the other national tragedies that we've had at national limits, there will be review and reconciliation and almost a reckoning about how we handled it. But that's probably a story for another day. And it would be terrific if at the federal level they did a little bit better speaking with one voice. It seems like there isn't always a unanimity of opinion or message from the federal government. To the extent they can change that, even though I understand there's uncertainty around what the exact message should be, I think that would help a ton throughout government in terms of credibility and thoughtfulness and just kind of solidarity, unity.
Of course. One more question for you,
Sure.
or two more questions. One of the economic impacts of this, one of just many, and they're going to reach on for years and around the globe, really, but is the impact on municipal operating budgets. And I know it's early in the game and it's hard because the puzzle's so incomplete right now. But one of the things people have talked about in Melrose, it's been obviously a very big point of contention in the past, or of discussion, is the kind of the lack of commercial revenue that the city gets, or not, relatively small amount, at least, let me say that. And in this case, is it almost a blessing in disguise where are you guys maybe expecting less of a hit than another city that gets 40% of their operating budget from commercial tax revenue? Melrose obviously gets much smaller amount. Are you guys expecting as much of a hit to the overall bottom line?
First, I haven't really thought about it from that perspective, to be sure. Compared to other cities and towns, for sure, we have no huge revenue from occupancy tax, hotel revenue. We do have significant revenue from the meals tax. Huge, not huge compared to a Somerville or Boston, but certainly from terms of like the fabric of the community and what those folks give in and the folks they employ. It certainly makes a big difference. But so the so-called local receipts won't take as big a hit as some other places, but the amount of revenue we get from the state is obviously substantial, and that relies on income tax, capital gains tax, and the sales tax, among other things. And those are things that are obviously going to significantly underperform. So I think the biggest jeopardy we have right now is the state aid. And I don't mean that as a criticism of the state. They're under the same pressures that any city and town is right now. And we're very mindful of that. I mean, I've even, it's funny, just before we spoke, I asked the DPW director and our auditor to give me some information about how our water and sewer use has been impacted, if at all. I don't know if I could see it being a lot more because people may be doing stuff a different way. I could see it being less because people are maybe a little bit less active. But that revenue that we kind of project out may be impacted. And I've asked them to take a look just to get an assessment. And we're keeping an eye on that. We're keeping an eye on excise tax, the local funds through basically an automobile value tax. And we'll be conservative. We'll keep our eye on it. But to your point, it really is a jump ball. Is that the feds could come in and say, here's a ton of relief. It looks like there is some relief, but that's still being shaken. It's a 500-page bill, and we're in the process of trying to sort that out and see what some of the federal relief means to Melrose.
Certainly. Well, Mayor Brodeur, you came in talking about, we were coming off the override. I knew you were talking about alcohol retail sales, and we were talking about so much other stuff over the past few months. I know now you're governing in a crisis, as is every elected official really in the state, in the country right now. What would you have to say as we kind of wind down here to Melrose? What do you want to let them know? And if there's one message from the city to them right now, what do you want to let them know?
Thank you. People have been terrific, responsive. Criticism that has come has been very well intentioned. I can't say thank you enough. And keep it up. We really are all in this together. I wish I could say it's going to be over tomorrow. It's going to be over next week. I think we're in it for longer than folks might have originally thought. So it's going to get, in some ways, it's going to get harder, and that means we got to lean on each other a little bit more than we used to. In a way, that's a great thing, because people are we're all leaning on our devices for so long, and they should be our number one way of connecting right now. But it has made people want to get outside and walk and be friendly. So it's interesting, right? But keep it up. Keep up the good work is what I would say to the folks in Melrose, because you've been fabulous, and together we're going to get through this.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Mayor Brodeur, for kind of taking some time here, updating people, informing people, answering some questions. Thank you, and keep everyone updated on the blog. And they can find that on the mayor's or the city website.
Yep.
And they can also, is there a phone number they can?
781-979-4440 is the line into my office. I can't promise immediate turnaround these days, but it is, if you don't get a live person, it is checked often, and we'll do our best to get back to you folks as efficiently as we can.
Excellent. Well, thanks. Thanks for taking the time, and stay safe out there.
Same to you. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for taking the time.